Relations between the United States and South Korea and relations between the United States and North Korea require a bit of background. Part of it is very complicated material that I alluded to in an earlier video about the whole question of foreknowledge of the attack on South Korea on June the 25th, 1950. And whether, to some degree, South Korea was caught within a much larger geopolitical game that was being played out between the USSR and China and the United States. Now, moving ahead, I mean, it's too complicated a subject to really recap with any justice right now. Except to note that South Korean history is, to put it mildly, complicated. Now, one thing that happened during the war itself it's not a sort of a uniform event. It went through quite distinct stages. The first being the North's almost complete occupation of the South. I mean, that tends to be exaggerated somewhat because the United States, by the time it had established a perimeter at Busan, it was still holding on to a fair bit of territory, and it actually at that point had more troops on the Korean Peninsula than the North had. So it was just a question of whether the United States was going to use the Busan Perimeter as a launch pad for its counterattack, or was going to counterattack from Japan. There was going to be an American counterattack. But after that first stage, when the North invaded a great deal of and took over a great deal of territory of the South, it was pushed back over the 38th parallel. It was pushed back, and the war could have ended at that point because initially the idea was that the Americans were staging a police action, and they simply wanted to push the North back out of the South. However, the war escalated. The United States, by that time, the UN command under MacArthur pushed forward through North Korea in order to basically take over North Korea and topple the regime. Because of the intervention of China, which is stage number 2, the Americans were attacked by the Chinese unexpectedly, and that led to stage 3, which was the fallback of UN troops, i.e. Mainly American troops, back through the 38th parallel, so much so that Seoul was lost a second time to the North Koreans. And that in turn led to stage 4, which was a very grinding war of attrition. But what also gets left out of this is that there was a very horrific air war which was waged on the North and parts of the South. Any areas of the South where North Korean soldiers or guerrillas were suspected to be were ruthlessly napalmed and bombed. And the North itself was bombed very ruthlessly. In fact, the degree of bombing actually shocked Curtis LeMay, the architect of the firebombing of Japan, just to give you an idea of how severe the bombing was. There are some who feel that this very severe, very unprecedented, historically very unequaled, even up till now, air war against the North's military, but also against its civilian population, is part of the reason that the North is still so difficult and so resentful and so filled with rage toward the United States. So there's that background issue, and then there's the other issue of really the degree to which Northeast Asia is a bit of a field upon which great geopolitical games are waged, and that is the part of the danger that's occurring right now. Everybody who studies the subject seriously realizes that the North is not a threat to the United States. The North is not going to send a nuclear missile over the United States. It's just not going to happen. But there are other reasons why the power elite in the United States might decide to wage war on the North, And at the same time, the Japanese, the Chinese, and the South Koreans also have very strong feelings about this, but all from very different perspectives.